County Public Digest, Issue 3 by County. This first one's called The Truth About the Yiz in June 2024. When people first meet me, they assume I will be a fundamentally good person, but then, after getting disappointed by the bad things I say and do, they come to a conclusion that actually I am a fundamentally bad person. But the thing they don't realize is that there are people I know who are even worse than me. So really, when you think about it, underneath my fundamentally bad person is actually a relatively good person. So sometimes the first impressions are correct. This one's called Elements and Light, June 2024. Until now, I thought Li on the periodic table stood for light. But if Li stands for lithium, then what element is light? We know that light exists because we can see it, and it hurts our eyes, and sometimes it burns our skin. And we know that if light exists, it must be made of atoms and molecules, and we know that all atoms and molecules are made of elements. But which ones? Is the light of the sun the same element as the light of a light bulb? Is the light of a lightning bolt the light of a glowworm? When I watch ELR on my big TV, I see that the light is made from many different shapes. Is the light of Ray Romano made from the same elements as the light of his brother Rob? And what element is sound? When I look at the periodic table, I can't find anything called either sound or light. I notice there is one for neon, but what element is the light of a neon light? When I stand outside the adult store to watch the beautiful neon woman lift up her skirt again and again, is this light made of neon, or is it caused by chemical reactions in the eyes and the mind? If light is an illusion, then how come birds and moths and flowers can see it? If light is real, then how come I can't hold it in my hands, only block its way? Is some light real and some light fake? I know the light from a match is real because when I strike it on the box and hold it to my hand, it hurts my hand. It even leaves a sore, which surely must prove that the light was real. But where does light go when I blow out the match? What happens to its elements? I've tried to find answers by reading about science, but none of them make sense to me. I will find my answers somewhere else. This one is The Interesting Woman, August 2024. I had the train to myself, so I decided to listen to some music on the speakers of my phone. I was enjoying a good song by Patsy Cline when a very interesting woman walked onto the train. I turned the music to a quiet level because I still wanted to listen, but I did not want the woman to hear what I was listening to. She would think I had emotional baggage. The trouble now was that I could barely hear the music. I had to hold the speaker right up to my ear. Then I realized I could solve my problem. I could play some music that the interesting woman would probably like. I tried to imagine what an interesting woman would listen to. Probably Kendrick Lamar. So I turned up my speaker to an appropriate volume and played the Kendrick Lamar. I did not like what I was hearing, but to make the interesting woman enjoy my company, I had to pretend that I did. So I closed my eyes and nodded my head, sometimes swaying it in the thoughtful behavior of a hip-hop connoisseur. Every now and then I squinted my eyes to get a glimpse of the interesting woman, but I could not tell if she was enjoying my music. Her mouth was straight, and her hands were still, and she was staring concentratedly out the window. I thought that maybe she couldn't hear the Kendrick Lamar, so I turned it up even louder and nodded even more. Then at the Ashfield station, an elderly couple walked onto the train. They were showing extreme displeasure at my hip-hop music, but I realized that you cannot please everyone. I could play some Jim Reeves, or change it back to Patsy, but it was in my better interest to continue my pleasing of the interesting woman. By the time the train got to the city, I had a bad headache and my jaw hurt from clenching. This Kendrick Lamar was much too noisy. On my way out the door, I took one last glimpse of the interesting woman. She was staring into space and shifting her hair. Then I saw, the big other does not exist. The big other wears AirPods. This one's called Cat and Mouse, May 2024. A mouse has joined me under the blanket. We are hiding from the cat. The mouse is hiding from the cat and its hate. I am hiding from the cat and its love. I cannot bear it. How can we love the most what doesn't love us back? The cat loves me, but I am indifferent. I love the mouse, but the mouse is indifferent. The cat and the mouse know where they stand. The cat hates the mouse, and the mouse hates the cat. Their hate-hate relationship is more hopeful than any love. Hate can fade, and that is good. Love can fade, and that is bad. Love is only good in the present tense, which does not last. Perhaps it would be kinder for me to hate the cat, but I am indifferent. I wish I was indifferent to the mouse. I wish the mouse was not indifferent to me. If I could just lift the blanket and give the cat the mouse, I could solve all my ailments. But this would be impossible. I would have to be indifferent to the mouse and not indifferent to the cat. For me and the mouse, the best thing to do is to stay true to our natures. Stay hidden. This one's called Japanese Peanuts, August 2024. This week I am teaching a class of students from Japan. Today we went to the public library. Their task was to survey the patrons on food consumption. What is your favorite food? Do you like Japanese food? Why do you like Japanese food? Being beginners, they found talking to strangers very stressful. But I was proud of them. They could do it. I felt I should give them a reward, so while they were talking to people, I went across to the IGA. The Tim Tams were not on special. Buying 2 packets would cost me $12, for which I would not be reimbursed. I spent 15 minutes looking for something, but could not find anything better, so I took the Tim Tams to the counter. Then in the line, I noticed there was a discount bin. Eureka! Japanese peanuts! The coloured nuts that look like birds' eggs, and the fact they were Japanese was a sign from God. By buying Japanese food for my Japanese students, I could show that I was culturally aware. The bags were down from $6 to $3, so I put down the Tim Tams and bought 2 packs, but when the shopping man scanned them, he scanned the old barcode instead of the yellow sticker, and my total came to $12, the same price as the full-price Tim Tams. Usually I would protest, but in my moment of benevolence, I didn't want to look like a cheapskate. Still, the rip-off put a dent in my goodwill feeling. I walked back to the library, making my grin extra wide so that if it relaxed, it would relax into a smile instead of a frown. The students were finished with the task and they were slouching on the beanbags, and some were asleep. "Everyone," I said, "check this out." I held up the 2 bags of Japanese peanuts, expecting a wave of vocal and facial recognition, but the students remained silent, their faces unchanged. I made my grin even wider. "Japanese peanuts," I announced, opening the bags and putting them on the table. "Grab a handful, everyone. I love these." The students stood reluctantly and formed a line to take a single nut each, chewing with apprehension. "Have some more," I said. "There's too many nuts." They each took one more and then began to whisper to one another in their own language. At the end of the lesson, I was left with 1.5 bags of Japanese peanuts. Now it is the end of the day. The nuts are a relief. I haven't had to source any lunch or dinner. 1 bag is almost gone, but if I ration out the rest, they will last me for another 2 days. The truism is true. Sometimes it pays to pay the full price. I'm going to skip amendments to issue 2. This one's The Trouble with Greasers, September 2024. The greaser community has a gatekeeping problem. Even after buying a costly leather jacket, rubbing some mousse in my hair, and showing them my motorcycle learner's permit, they still do not accept me. Worse, I am treated in a rude and ungainly manner. The greasers are always telling me to kiss off and calling me specs. The greaser community has an ableism problem. Just because I have poor eyesight does not mean I have a poor heart. Actually, I am one of the best people I know. In fact, my glasses are my greatest strength. They allow me to see the greasers for who they truly are. Bad. Well-being, September 2024. There was no good reason to hold the staff meeting at Cottesloe Beach. It was Student Welfare's idea. She thought it would promote mental health, but I found the fresh change of space very inconvenient. Normally after class, I like to spend an hour marking tests or playing the piano, but today I had to leave straight away to beat the after-school traffic and find parking, and when I finally found the congregation, I was 20 minutes late. The staff were crowded together under a single umbrella, and I had to sit on the outskirts where I couldn't reach the cheese and crackers or get under the shade. The principal spoke about declining enrollment. The head of studies introduced the new receptionist. The campus manager reminded us to cut back on excessive photocopying, and the student welfare officer announced it was Are You OK Day. She handed us each an A3 colour page with the word well-being in the rainbow font. We were to brainstorm in groups what the word meant to us personally. The campus manager was grumbling. No one could write properly. The only surface was sand and my pen kept jabbing through. The activity was cut short by a big gust of wind. Everyone's papers blew into the sea. After the failed activity, the head of maths opened his laptop to show us how to take attendance on the new LMS. I took off my shoes and my socks and laid down and stretched out and closed my eyes. The waves sounded like cars. The sun was making my eyelids turn rhizomatic colours. I could see the veins all pulsing a fraction behind my heartbeat. It was too interesting to sleep, but I didn't want to open my eyes. I knew that if I opened them and showed some respect to my bosses and colleagues, it would be even more disrespectful. I would fall asleep again for real. By merely pretending to sleep, and everyone could tell, I was being more insolent than rude. My behavior would reflect poorly on me and not the boring speaker. It was a kindness I was doing. Plus, I was already too far gone. Even if I sat up and opened my eyes and put on my shoes and smiled and nodded, I would not be redeemed. The staff would never forget. So I continued to be asleep. Then when I opened my eyes, it was night. This is Cool Idea, October 2024. Everyone is always smiling at me because I am always smiling at them. But in truth, I don't even see them. I am thinking of a cool idea. This one's called The Trade Person, October 2024. Today in the shopping centre, I saw a very interesting tradesperson. He was wearing muddy boots and a high-vis jacket, and underneath his arm he carried a cinder block. He carried it straight into Coles. Later at the greengrocer's I saw him again. On top of his cinder block was now a pack of sliced ham. Behind him in the line stood 4 other customers, their trolleys filled with produce. He had nothing. "And what vegetables would you recommend?" I heard him say. I went in to listen. "Well, it depends," replied the greengrocer. "Are you having them plain or with that ham?" "Plain." "Well," she said, "you could have any vegetable. All of them are good." "I have allergies," he said. "Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. Anything in particular?" "Bees." "Ah," she said. "Well, you won't have any trouble with our vegetables. Just take a look around and let me know what you find." She turned to smile at the line of people, but the tradesman was not yet finished. "And what is your most popular vegetable?" "What are the vegetables that people like?" "Well," she said, "mushrooms are in season. We've been selling a fair few mushrooms this week." "Mushrooms? Okay, I'll have one of those, please." Later I saw him in the vacant lot outside the car park, hunched upon his cinder block, staring at his feet. From my glove box I retrieved my binoculars. The ants were swarming his open packet of ham, and as he watched, he chewed his mushroom very slowly. He appeared to be unconvinced. With a furrowed brow, he held the mushroom between finger and thumb, turning it slowly, holding it up to the light. Occasionally he would press it to his nose, inhale, and take the smallest of bites, the taste of the mushroom causing him to flinch. Then he would close his eyes and slowly shake his head. Let's let this plane pass. Yeah. This one's called No Hat Policy, October 2024. The school had spent decades failing to enforce a no-hat policy. I profoundly didn't care. It wasn't my fault the principal had chosen the hat to be a symbol of disrespect. Now, against my will, I spent a good third of every class trying to minimize the student hat count. It was easy enough to make them take off their hats when they came through the door, but during the lesson the hats would always find a way back onto their heads. Because I didn't care, I never would notice until a lady from admin walked past, bursting through the door, pointing, 1, 2, 3, 4, boys in hats, you know the rules. Geordie, I'll be speaking to your mum. Frequently I'd received terse emails and hastily written notes in my pigeonhole stating, no hats. I decided to become more vigilant, but the boys were very crafty. One time I saw them sitting at the back, each reading a big book of Where's Wally. That they were reading anything was better than nothing, so I let them keep reading for a good 20 minutes. But when I finally walked to the back of the class, I realized that behind the books their eyes were closed and they were all wearing hats. Sometimes a student would plead for the bathroom and wouldn't return, so after 15 minutes I would send in the class snitch. "Yeah," he'd report, "Geordie's okay. He's just in one of the cubicles, wearing his hat." I wish God had not invented hats, but I have found they can be a good motivational tool. "Geordie, if you finish your work, you can have 2 minutes hat time." Sometimes at the end of term, I'd wheel out the TV and let them pick a hat movie. Okay, guys, for hat movies, we have Forrest Gump or Dunstan Checks In. Who votes Forrest? 1, 2, just 2? And Dunstan? Wow, okay, Dunstan again? Okay, good. The Trouble with Stoicism, October 2024. Stoic men love to deny themselves the healthy pleasures. They love to buy an iceberg lettuce just to see how long they can go without eating it. Success for the Stoic is a rotten lettuce, and they will continue to let it rot in the fridge only to remind them of their strong and disciplined will. Only on the night before rent inspection will they grant themselves the final pleasure, the disposal of the liquid remains of the rotten lettuce. Fuck, that's a tongue twister. Rotten lettuce. Alright. Sourwood Mountain, October 2024. Before I sleep, I walk to the coop to lock in the hens in case the fox comes round to work his mischief. Normally I'll poke my head in to count the bodies of the 5 best friends, Bev, Kev, Bess, Merv and Doug, sleeping in the coop top to toe atop their eggs while the loner hen Snoopy sleeps atop the roof and the Lord's favourite Warnie up atop the bin, always first in line for breakfast grain. Normally I collect Snoop and Warnie, carrying them to the cage while they pretend to sleep, but tonight when I walk to the far corner of the yard, I see the silhouette of all 7 hens sleeping on top of the roof, giving poor Snoopy very little room to stretch out, and with the full moon behind them and the spring breeze ruffling Warnie's favourite hair, I send a prayer to the fox to stay put, skip a meal. For who am I to deprive these hens of a warm and lovely night? Elevator Man, November 2024. In the car park elevator, I watched the man of the Elevator Man, November 2024. In the car park elevator, I watched the phone of the man in front of me, his Facebook a stream of kebab shop content. Kebab meat box, kebab meat box, met with a love react every time. Then appeared a beautiful young lady in bed, cradling an infant child. The man stopped scrolling, his muscles went still. His thumb hovered for several seconds until he shook his head and scrolled on past. Oh, okay, this one's a good one. Election problem. 6 November 2024. Skip over 60 digital radio stations and nothing but bubkiss. I wanted to hear some election coverage. I wanted to hear who my favourite state, Georgia, voted for. But all the stations were just playing music. Bad music that sucked. Then I heard something better than election coverage. My favourite country and rap song, Take My Horse to the Old Town Road by Little Nas X. I turned it up and wound down my windows and made my hand into a dolphin until the song was finished. Then they played an advert for Nappy San, which I don't need, so I hit skip, and the next station was Kicks Country, where I heard a tiny bit of election coverage, that North Carolina was in the lead, but I didn't hear anything about Georgia, the land of peaches and deliverance, where some of my American friends live. The next station was singing about something in French, which was very lucky as I had done some Duolingo over the winter break, but I only remembered one phrase, Je t'aime, mon trésor, and that wasn't what the French woman was saying. She was just saying all this French hogwash I didn't understand, and then I realized why. She was actually singing in Spanish, and then upon further listening, I realized she was actually singing in English, and the song was actually one of my favorite songs, the Macarena. People don't like this song because of the overrated dance, but I think they should give it another listen. Sonically, the Macarena is a masterpiece, and the narrative of the song is actually very captivating. The song is about a promiscuous young woman who cannot stop doing the Macarena. She does the Macarena so much that everyone calls her Macarena, kind of like my high school friend Tim, who was so good at doing the worm that everyone called him Worms. The Macarena has a predicament. Men can't stay away from her, and they are always trying to dance beside her, and every night she would choose the best dancer to take home and dance the Macarena in the bedroom, if you know what I mean. Only it never works out. As we learn in verse 2, the Macarena has a FIFO boyfriend called Vitorino who is flying out for work, 2 weeks on, 1 week off, and being very fearful and possessive, he has tasked his two uncles, Los and Del, to watch over her and keep her from doing any funny business. In fact, they are the two guys you can hear in the chorus of the song singing, which roughly translates to, "Boys, keep your hands off our niece Macarena. You can look but not touch. You can dance a Macarena." This is actually a Spanish incantation spell, sung to ward off any inappropriate desires by sublimating the libido towards the more appropriate medium of dance, which is why no one can resist doing the Macarena when they hear this song. No one knows if Macarena is dancing because her uncles are singing, or if the uncles are singing because the Macarena is dancing. Either way, as long as her uncles, the boyfriend's uncles, are in the room, the Macarena and her admirers have to keep on dancing until they collapse in exhaustion. Interestingly, in the middle of the song, the Macarena actually contradicts this narrative by hinting at an illicit engagement.
Now, come on, what was I supposed to do? He was out of town, and his two friends were so fine.
Now, there are multiple possibilities suggested by this line, but I like to think she is merely bluffing to lure in more dancers. Like, surely it must give her a thrill to see a swarm of men following all her moves, in which case, I don't know why she doesn't just become a dance teacher or lead a class on water aerobics. The other theory, which I really don't like, is that the two boys she speaks of may refer to Los and Del Rio, the uncles of her boyfriend, who he trusted to watch over her, but this is a theory I find too sordid to believe. I like to think that the two boys are a metatextual reference to the Bayside Boys, the guys who remixed the Uncle's song into the version we know and love today. The Bayside Boys put this song on the charts by adding a backing dance beat and a shamanic wail. And speaking of this wail, perhaps the wail is actually a kind of counterspell, a wail allowing the Bayside Boys to be immune to the uncle's incantations, which explains why I never feel the urge to dance when I hear the song. Not because I have no desires, but because I always sing along to the wailing part. Ah! I really love this wail. It is right within my vocal range, and whenever I sing it, I am able to just sit and listen, and perhaps even fantasize about a romantic rendezvous with the beautiful Macarena. No need to dance.
Bala tu cuerpo, alegría, Macarena, que tu cuerpo pa' dar la alegría y cosa buena. Bala tu cuerpo, alegría, Macarena, Macarena. Bala tu cuerpo, alegría, Macarena, que tu cuerpo pa' dar la alegría y cosa buena. Bala tu cuerpo, alegría, Macarena, Macarena.
Anyway, after a few minutes the song is finished and I switched to the next station, Coast FM, hosted by a comic duo called Lozzie and the Skunk, who were taking a call from their election correspondent, Rat, who was pronouncing election in an interesting way by changing the L to an R and then being very randy with the soundboard. Predictions for Harris? Donald Trump? Lozzie was cackling and the skunk could barely breathe. And I have to admit, I was chuckling too, because changing the L to an R in the word election is a joke I have always wanted to make, but have never found the right audience or context. Part of me was sad this rat had stolen my joke, and perhaps it was nobody's joke. Perhaps he was simply tapping into the collective unconscious, which is what all good comedians do. So I was chuckling along, but chuckling in bad conscience, because I know it is wrong to make light of the fate of the American Empire. I pressed skip, and the next station was RTR-FM, where the DJ was punctuating his house music with mentions of vibes. RTR presenters are always talking about vibes and assuming that the vibes are good, but as someone with terrible vibes, I feel very excluded. Knock knock, who's there? Oh, Ben Yaxley, don't let him in. Shut the door, keep it locked. That's what they're always saying. I'll never understand the appeal of disco or house music. To me, they have neutral vibes. I pressed skip, and the next station was talking about men's netball and the travesty of last night's game. How come it's always men's netball, never women's netball? The next, Nova 937 was playing an advert drenched in reverb for a new campaign called Ring for Sting. When you hear the sting, ring. The first person to phone the number during a song by the Police will be flown out to London for a special lunch date with Sting. They would be treated to a private acoustic concert and stay in his Airbnb. I thought this was a pretty good deal. Pulling the car onto the side of the freeway, I typed the station number into my phone and waited for the sting. Several of my least favourite songs went by. Uptown Funk, Walk of Life, Dancing in the Moonlight. Then came several minutes of loud, tinny and echoing adverts where they told me again to ring for Sting. I thought about all the people in Perth in the same position as me, sitting in their cars on the sides of highways, their fingers hovering over the call button as they waited for the riff of Every Breath You Take. My whole life I've been considered mentally slow, a man with mid-wit and poor reflexes. How could I possibly beat the entire population of Perth in the Ring for Sting challenge? I hit the indicator, checked my revision mirror, and got back onto the highway. The station played a Michael Jackson song and then a melancholy Bob Marley song about the 1969 moon landing. I loved dub and reggae and was enjoying the song when they interrupted it right in the middle to, I couldn't believe it, announce the winner. Congratulations, Jess from Morley. You've won yourself a one-way ticket to a very special you-know lunch with a very special you-know-who. How are you feeling, Jess? Excited? Well, she said, you can say I'm walking on the moon. And as the three presenters lost it at the joke, I couldn't believe my ears. I'd been absolutely cheated. Of course they had to pick a song I didn't know, an incredibly obscure B-side where Sting pretends to be a Jamaican person. I thought about calling to make a complaint, but I decided I would send an email when I got home. Or better yet, I would drive to the station in Subiaco, refusing to leave until they rescinded the prize and played Every Breath You Take so that I could have a decent shot at winning. Outraged, I turned off the radio in protest, and then remembered the election and turned it back on again and skipped to the next station. Kentucky and Wyoming had voted for Trump, but still no news about Georgia. Then the announcer said it. The Georgia results had come in. Georgia, the swing state, was now vehemently Trump country. I couldn't believe it. My ex-lover, my family friends, the ghosts of Flannery, Carson and Cruz, they had all voted for someone I think is nasty and rude. I turned off the radio once and for all and listened to a CD-ROM. Then I got home, I looked in the mirror and saw the top button on my collared shirt had been undone all day. I went to fix it, but remembered that the top button is the boundary line between greaser and nerd. Aware of the new reality, I kept it undone. This is called St. George Knife Stropper, November 2024. Waiting at the crossing on St. George's Terrace, I saw a cubicle commando unbuckling his belt. Then in a big long stretch, he pulled the whole thing out. I recognized the brand, R.M. Williams. He stood on the buckle and pulled it tight. Then out of his pocket he took a prism of diamond powder, rubbing it up and down until the belt turned green. I moved a step closer to get a better look, and then he put the rub back in his pocket, and out of the same he drew a knife. I moved a step backwards. He started stropping the knife upon the belt, back and forth and back and forth. I moved a step closer. Then he dropped the knife and the belt and rolled up his sleeve and stuck out his tongue and began to strop his tongue upon his arm, back and forth, until his arm was glistening with slag. I could smell it. I moved a step backwards. Then he picked up the knife and straightened his arm and swept his blade right down the length of it. I moved a step closer. I saw the knife was covered in hair, and his arm had a long bald strip. "Cleanest shave in Perth," he said, and gave me his card. ChatGPT problem. November 2024. You say that every prompt consumes an entire glass of water, and you say it in a tone of disgust. But how come when I drink a glass of water while riding in bed, you say this is a good habit, but when a robot does it, you say it is bad? It is only natural that when I transfer my enjoyment of riding to artificial life, I transfer my enjoyment of water too. I don't even like water. I hate the stuff, and I only ever drink it as self-flagellation, and even then I rarely ever finish the glass. I leave it on the bricks outside for the bees, and surely if we are all for a flat ontology and the abandonment of natural hierarchies, then a robot on a Filipino data farm should be welcome to the very same resources as everyone else. Local knowledge, November 2024. Today I did relief as a tour bus operator. The bus driver drove the bus while I stood at the front with a microphone sharing my local knowledge. Normally I have a lot of local knowledge, but the stretch from UWA to Cottesloe Beach is not my area. My tour was somewhat lousy. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, to your left, right, is the Claremont Quarter where you can buy a $40 quiche. And over there, do you see that pub? That's where the Claremont Killer hung about. And over there is the Rose Park. It says it has roses even though you can't see any. Sorry, what? Oh yeah, it has something to do with dead Anzacs. And whoa, right to your left is MLC, the private girls' school for girls. My ex went there, and actually my brother's ex went there too. What? No, they weren't the same person. No, they didn't know each other. Oh, down that street, that's where my other ex lived. No, we don't keep in touch. She moved over east and... that's my other ex-girlfriend at the traffic light. Give her a wave. I'm just kidding. And now in a moment, if you look straight ahead, you will get a look at Perth's famous seaside, the Indian Ocean. Hold your breath. And as the bus crested the hill and the ocean took up 2/3 of the front window, everyone let out a big ooh. When we got to the beach, it was cloudy. Thinking of all that lost love put me in bad spirits. The wind slicked up my hair. This is Urinal Screamadelica, November 2024. Pissing in the urinal at Alabama's Sound, looking at the person next to me in a horizontal manner. Long sleeve red shirt with a cartoon amoeba. Primal Scream, my favorite. Screamadelica, I say. Nice. The man doesn't hear me over his stream. Where words fail, music achieves, so I open my mouth to sing, but I can't remember the lyrics. I make to become the female backing vocals instead. The guy finishes up, giving it several shakes. Now that it is quieter, I try again. Screamadelica, I say. The man glances up at me. Nice. The man grunts and turns away. I'm not hurt by his rudeness. This is his loss. There are so few Primal Scream fans in the world, and he has now closed his door upon one of them. Then I remember the lyrics. All is not lost. He is still in the bathroom, rushing his hands. I sing extra loud so he can hear me over the rushing of the tap. I'm gonna live the life I love. I'm gonna love the life I live. Oh, oh, oh. The man exits the bathroom and a new man enters at the same time. I turn to make eye contact. Baby, don't fight the feeling. This one is limousine argument. Let's get this out of the wind a little bit, hopefully. December 2024. The normies are always asking, "Hey Ben, have you ever ridden a limousine?" To which I say, "Yes, it is called the bus." But they say, "A limousine is different to a bus." To which I say, "How so?" "A limousine is long," they say. To which I say, "A bus is actually longer." But they say, "You have the privacy in a limousine." To which I say, "Just catch the bus at night." But they say, "A bus is not romantic." To which I say, "Bring a date." But they say, "In a limousine you drink champagne." To which I say, "You can also drink champers on the bus." But they say, "A limousine is more convivial because the seats face one another." To which I say, "You can just sit in the disabled area." But they say the seats are bigger in a limousine. You can sit in between two beautiful women or get a funny photo with your friends. To which I say, "You can also do this at the back of the bus." I see no point in a limousine. I see no point in normies in general. I don't understand why they get so excited about the things that they do, and I don't understand why they live at all. I don't understand why I live life either. The normies seem to have it figured out. If you asked a normie what is the point in living, they would say, to ride in a limousine. What worries me most is the possibility that the normies may be correct. Health is Wealth 2, December 2024. People are always stopping me on the street saying, help me, a so-and-so is chasing me. And I can only hold up my hands and say, I'm sorry, miss, I cannot help you. I am not a policeman. Just because I wear wraparound sunnies and a blue collared shirt and a bulletproof vest and carry a taser and walkie-talkie and baton and pistol, it does not mean I am a policeman. It just means I value my life. I have learned the desire for self-preservation at a very late age. In my 30th year, I've discovered the joy of sunshine, and I will let no one take my sunshine away, and if they do, they will find me armed and ready. But it is okay, I obey the law. My pistol is just for show. It contains no real bullets, just flavoured steam. A mouthy lemon sorbet, so yummy, and it's easy to use. You just make sure the safety is off and that you've pulled back the hammer, and then you place the barrel into your mouth and inhale as you squeeze the trigger. It's not addictive, but it has made me an addict, and they say it is a gateway drug, which I think is true. I'm even thinking of buying a real gun, not to vape from, of course, haha, I value my life. I would only ever use a gun to fire at other people. Because of my new style, I have lost many friends. No one likes to hear me speak for 10 minutes anymore. They say I have become too intense and have even shadow banned me from Peekabah and the Bird. It isn't official, but nobody says hi to me anymore. They just nod and keep moving. And whenever I sit next to them, they make an excuse and leave. It really isn't fair. I really haven't said anything all that bad. Like if you were to transcribe all my average conversations, nothing would leap out as all that offensive. It is more the way I say it, apparently, that I end every sentence as if I am keying a car or shanking someone in prison. I disagree, but I can't change how other people choose to see me. What they should know is that the me they see is not the real me. When I am around other people, they only see my bad side. They don't see me when I am alone in my house, having a quiet and restful day. They don't see me at my best when I am watching some YouTube on the Chromecast or ordering some homewares off the internet. They don't see the real me, they only see the mask, the false self. Witch Hazel, December 24. I say I'm immune to advertising, but all you have to do is call your product Witch Hazel and I'll buy bottles and bottles. Witch Hazel, it sounds so mysterious. I don't know what it's made of or even what it does, but I love to strip down and splash handfuls of the Witch Hazel all over my naked body. I don't care if I make a mess, it keeps me looking young, and I know I would look young because people are always saying I look 25 even though I have lived for more than 30 years. I just have a skincare routine. It is called Witch Hazel. Midland Dominoes. This is another childhood story. There's a car here. Outside the Midland Dominoes in 2002, me and my brother John are waiting for my dad. I am in the front and John is in the back, and even though I have a front seat, I am furious. I don't know why, but I am filled with rage, and on the hood of the fancy black car beside us is a man with good hair making out with a beautiful woman. I'm trying not to look when I see him pull away from the woman and begin to unscrew the cap of a 2-litre bottle of Coke. Holding it up with a smile, they then begins to scull. And I see the bottle glowing amber under the street light and his Adam's apple glistening in the dusk, and I think how it all looks like an advertisement on TV. And the more I watch him drink, the more I believe this is true, that this man and woman are somehow acting in a TV commercial that is being filmed right at this very moment. Being shot with a hidden camera, and that with our car parked next to them, surely me and my brother must be in the frame, soon to be seen by everyone I know. And I am holding my breath. I don't want to mess it up because I know my dad will soon return with the pizzas and drive away before they can hand the man a second bottle of Coke to do another take. I would really like to be on TV, so I hold my breath and watch the man turn 2 litres into 0 litres, and all the while sculling with his arm around a beautiful woman. And my brother begins to say something in the back seat. I don't remember what, and I tell him to shut up, be quiet, and then he starts to say something again, and I tell him to shut up once more. I see it coarser, and he waits another few seconds and then says something a third time, and at this I turn around and I grab his spiked hair and punch him hard above the eyebrows. 1, 2, 3 times, hard as I can, and I am so shocked at my burst of violence, and my brother just stares wide-eyed and amazed, and he begins to bawl, and I say no, shh, imploring him to be quiet, and the couple in the car beside us are looking our way with displeasure, but John keeps howling louder and louder, and then he is kicking my chair and screaming until he is out of breath, and then inhaling and screaming again, and I hear the car doors thunk beside us and the car screeching into reverse, and then driving off with a cloud of broken asphalt, and I can see the empty bottle rolling onto the road, and in the rear vision mirror behind my screaming brother, I can see my dad walking out of Domino's doors with a pizza and garlic bread, and his face turning from happy to anger as he hears my brother squalling, and me telling him again and again to shut up. As my dad stomps towards the car, all I can think of is how I have ruined the Coca-Cola commercial by punching my 6-year-old brother 3 times in the head. And now it is captured on film to be seen by everyone in Australia, and all my family and friends and girls in my year will see it on Channel 10 and be deeply disgusted and ashamed of my violence, and they will call my brother a crybaby and call my dad a bad father, and my dad has yanked the door open and is now shouting at both of us, and now I am bawling and crying too, and all I can think about is whether the camera is still rolling. Then now everyone will see me crying on TV like a crybaby too, and the girls I like won't like me, and my friends will leave me, and I will get expelled because I have brought shame upon my school whilst wearing school uniform. And all weekend I avoid commercial TV, switching to SBS and hiding the remote, and I take the batteries from the cordless phone and hide that too, and all weekend I hide in my room watching my oncoming disownment, thinking the recurring thought that I wish I had never been born. But then I get to school on Monday, no one is looking or whispering or laughing at me, and the principal does not call me to his office, and I ask my friend Drew if he has seen me on TV, but he says no. So I tell him I was in an ad for Coca-Cola, and he says he doesn't believe me. And then he tells everyone that I said I was in an ad on TV, and they laugh and say, how am I'm always lying, which is not true. I was on TV. But I do not tell them what for. Morning ritual. The 1st of January 2025. Every morning before I wake, I remind myself of a disappointment. A disappointment for every day. I am always the disappointer. Then I don't feel like waking up. I lay a bit longer. The bed hurts me when laying in too long. I move to the couch. It takes 4 or 5 hours. Then I am happy as Larry. This one's called Girl Version. One time walking to Coles, me and Tim saw the female versions of ourselves. One was tall and gangly with a rectangle nose and golden hair. The other was small and tanned and wore a little green cap. They were walking towards us, and when we passed, they avoided our eyes. Tim, I said, did you see that? We stopped and looked back. They were several houses down, looking back at us. I gave a nod. They looked away and kept walking. That felt strange, said Tim, but I don't know why. Tim, I said, didn't you see that? That was us as girls. It took some reasoning to convince him. He didn't like being the shorter one. But when I pointed out that he was also wearing the same green cap with the flap at the back, he said, damn, we should have talked to them. We probably still could, I said, and we turned around and jogged back up the hill. But when we got to the top, they were nowhere to be seen. This is called Friends with an Animal, February 2025. I am writing a script for a movie. It is about a boy who becomes friends with an animal. I still haven't figured out what animal. The boy lives with his dad in a small coastal town. The dad is a widow. The boy hates school because he doesn't have friends. But one day, instead of going to school, he goes into the wilderness. I'm still waiting to find out what wilderness. Forest, coast or creek, it will have to depend on the animal. And there in the wilderness, he meets an animal. The animal is in trouble. Trouble or danger, I don't know what sort. It will have to depend on the animal. The boy helps out the animal. He brings it home and fixes its ailments, and during this time, he becomes friends with the animal. At first, the dad does not want to have the animal. He is afraid to have anything die on him again. Also, he would rather the boy had human friends, but the boy no longer needs them. He is friends with the animal. Time passes, the boy grows up and gets really good grades. He is off to the city for university. From the graduation stage, he sees his dad weeping. Then he sees the animal. The last shot is a close-up of the boy smiling and winking at the animal. The animal winks back. I am almost finished with my screenplay, but I still need to figure out what animal. Once I know, I will be ready to contact Screen West. I have already emailed them my rough idea, and they say they really, really like it. I just need to let them know what kind of animal, and then they'll begin production. They have already chosen the actor for the boy. I am unhappy because the child looks nothing like me. You see, the movie is an autobiography. It is about the time I became friends with an animal. This is the last one. It's called Really Long Time. The older you get, the more you have known everyone for a really long time. I can't believe it. Someone I met last week, in 10 years, I will have known them for a really long time. Someone will ask if we have met, and I'll say, yes, 10 years, and they'll say, wow, that is a really long time. Unless people become dead, but in my experience, everyone I know doesn't die very much. Very, very rarely. I have a good friend. I only see him a couple times a year, but I have known him for 18 years, which is a really long time. But every time I see him, he asks if I am still with the same woman I once dated for a really short time, a really long time ago. He thinks that life is a really short time, but I know it is a really long time. Life is long, so long. And every day, life becomes more and more of a really long time. This is the longest time in the world. That was Yiz County Public Digest, Issue 3, published March 2026. Find more writing at yizcounty.rodeo. You don't need a .com, just yizcounty.rodeo. And buy previous issues at yizcounty.bigcartel.com. Thank you.